Hi. I wanted to jump on to introduce myself. My name is Alex, and I want to introduce why I started ICU2. Let's take it back about to 2017 when I was diagnosed with interstitial cystitis. I had a 10-year spell of chronic UTIs from the time I was in college to the time that I met my boyfriend, who is now my husband. And the whole reason that this journey started is because I started feeling pain with sex, I want to say around 2015-ish. And then it escalated very quickly. It went from things being mildly uncomfortable to extreme discomfort where it felt like my vagina was being ripped in half. So I was seeing a very religious, conservative male gynecologist at the time, who kept diagnosing me with chronic UTIs. We were more focused on my ovaries at that time. I was diagnosed with PCOS. I believe at the time I'd already had a left ovarian cystectomy. I had a pretty large cyst on my ovary that was dragging it down with the rest of my uterus. So it was like so heavy that it was tilting everything. Um, so after being diagnosed over and over and over again with UTIs, I was starting to put pieces together that nobody else had. I wasn't having sex. I wasn't holding my urine and not voiding my bladder. I wasn't doing anything that would cause a UTI. I was stressed. I was drinking a lot, maybe. I was eating things that I wasn't supposed to eat, maybe. It just varied. And so I started figuring out, okay, things aren't right. Something's off. So I kept going to my gynecologist, and he just, finally got to a point where he told me, look, there is nothing I can do for you. Save sex for procreation, and outside of that, no intercourse. And so, no. Um, and he basically told me to come into the office when I had a real problem. So that kind of sent me downhill. I was super depressed for a while. I was trying to figure out, what was wrong with me, if it was psychosomatic, what was going on, until I realized I just needed to be referred to a gynecologist with a vagina. And this is no disrespect to, any other gynecologist of any gender. It's just when you're a female and you get to this point of why I can't have sex and no other doctors want to talk about it, it's like, the forbidden word, the S, the scarlet letter. So I needed somebody that would, I guess, verify that I wasn't crazy, give me that validation. And within about 3 visits, my wonderful gynecologist, Marisol Chivas, she diagnosed me with interstitial cystitis. She realized that there was more hematuria, which is blood in the urine, than there was bacteria. There wasn't really any bacteria other than the normal amount. And she started looking at my symptoms with, I didn't know that it wasn't normal to pee upwards of 5 to 6 times a night. I thought it was just insomnia. And yes, I do drink a lot of water and I drink a lot of tea, but it was more than that. So she started putting all these pieces together until it formed the IC puzzle. She diagnosed me, she put me on Elmeron, and about 3 months of no progress, she referred me to a urologist to see what was really going on. At the time, he ordered a hydrodistension and a cystoscopy. So when I woke up from the surgery or the procedure, all I remember being told was, "Hey, they found the lesions. You're not crazy." And it was like, okay, cool, man. Like, what? So when it was explained to me during the hydrodistension, they found that my bladder was ripped in different places. It had holes, which is the cause for the pain of IC. So most bladders have this layer. I like to think of it as like an oil and water situation. So your bladder is coated with this oil, and whatever our kidneys filter out is that water. Usually our bodies void whatever is in our bladder. Basically what's happening for IC bladders is it's like a sponge. There are holes in it, so everything that our kidneys are deeming toxic or waste are being absorbed through our bladder lining. And that's where you have the minerals and all that stuff, to where it starts to create the pain and discomfort. So anyways, I felt like I wasn't crazy, but again, it wasn't great news. You know, it's incurable. There's only one medication. It makes you lose your hair. Now it makes you lose your vision. We don't know. But overall, it was a lot. I was overwhelmed. I was obsessed with finding how to make my body better. I wanted to have sex again. I wanted to repair the holes in my relationship. Different for everybody, but for me, it felt like, as a sexual person, there's something that has to be out there to make my quality of life better. From there, my quality of life kind of went down. The hydrodistension turned my IBS-D into IBS-C, which was constipation. I went in for I want to say, emergency visit about a month after the hydrodistension, and I really thought it was my ovary on my right side. Again, I was still concerned about my PCOS. And while there was a small cyst, outside of just congestion, there was no problem. So the ER doc sent me home. I followed up with my gynecologist next day because I was in extreme pain. I mean, I don't cry when it comes to pain, but I was, in tears. I couldn't, compose myself because I was in so much pain. And the ER docs basically told me, treat it like you would a UTI. There's something wrong with your ovary. You're just ovulating. You should be good. My gynecologist booked the OR the next day, and she found out that I was completely impacted from my small intestine to my large intestine. So I thought I was, voiding my bowels regularly after the hydrodistension, but that turned out to be very wrong. And this is where pelvic floor therapy really comes in clutch, because these therapists know what it's going to do. It's that initial shock to your system, to your fascia, to your just pelvic floor in general when you go in and do any type of laparoscopic procedure, or like a biopsy or anything that would shock the delicate organ that you're doing everything to protect, right? So after buying the IC solution book and going down the list of medications, over-the-counter supplements, tests, procedures, what have you, I checked all the boxes off. I was basically my own advocate. My gynecologist was open to anything I had for suggestions because she knew I was in pain. She knew that I needed help and I was out of options. So she prescribed me the amitriptyline. We tried tramadol. We tried a bunch of different stuff. I am still on amitriptyline, but a lower dosage. I'm on tramadol as needed. It helps me, but I also have a box of stuff that never worked, that I spent a gaggle of money on, and that basically I wanted to save you from having to experiment with yourself. Save you the time, the money, the sanity, because when I tell you I went through everything, I went through everything. I even went so far as to buy a special lube that was for people that had menopause symptoms but that wanted sex with no pain, and let me tell you, didn't help. But these things might help for you. So over time, I will be reviewing all of the products that I bought and what helped me and what didn't help me, and maybe it'll help you kind of narrow your search, because if you do what I did, I started downloading research article after research article just because I could not comprehend that there was an incurable bladder disorder that literally was life crippling. It shocked me. And from there, it was kind of a tailspin into chaos. We found that pelvic floor dysfunction was one of my main contributors, so I was referred to a pelvic floor physical therapist. And while she was absolutely wonderful, I saw her for over a year. my body wasn't making progress. It was making progress, but in baby steps, like the progress that I would make would be undone in a drive home in traffic because I was clenching my pelvic muscles and, tightening my butt cheeks and making sure I wasn't going to crash or whatnot. So, fast forward to getting a total hysterectomy. I went on endo medications because it was suspected that I had either adenomyosis or endometriosis. So I went on Lupron for about 6 months. That was a shit show. To anybody that is on that, I apologize. It is horrible. I hope it is helping you. It did not help me. But it did help my pelvic pain symptoms. So because it checks so many boxes, we stayed with the endo diagnosis because of the medication. So I tried Lupron, I tried Orlisa. Both leaded to my bones feeling like they were going to break if the wind blew at them. And I was pre-diabetic because of the medication. So it was chemically induced menopause and chemically induced prediabetes. So after a year and a half of that, which was horrible, ladies, menopause, night sweats, and hot flashes, it ain't the business. And I have a bunch of resources for that too, because I refuse to be in a place where I was freezing and sweating at the same time. My poor husband would be layered in his robe and pajamas and blankets and, lighting a fire while I had the door open and the fan on because I was dying. I mean, I was stripped down to a cami and underwear while I was writing my papers. During all of this, I was going through grad school. I now have my master's in healthcare administration. But I came to realize that I had to choose the lesser of two evils, which was, am I going to get rid of my bladder or am I going to get rid of my uterus? Because we have no idea which is worse right now. It was all based on, what my body was projecting as symptoms or signs of endometriosis. So I made the decision with my husband to get a total hysterectomy. My urologist was not in favor. I had just established care with him, and he really wanted me to stick with the IC instillations to see if my pain went away. But when he told me 6 months to 3 years, I mean, that felt like it was just a lifetime. I couldn't even see myself getting to 6 months, with the pain that I was in. So I went for the total hysterectomy. And again, my wonderful gynecologist, while she had her reservations, and she still does, she said, okay. I went in there with my husband and I told her, I was like, we need to get this thing out of me. And while the year following, I'm quickly approaching my hysterversary. It's on the 3rd of March. It kind of, the year following that was insane. I wish I had planned better for it because I would have saved myself so much time and energy and pain and sanity, because the total hysterectomy, the first, I want to say 4 months were hell. The first 3 months were, I don't even want to go back to it. I was flaring, every single day. But before that, I was flaring 3 weeks out of a month when I had a period. And that was assuming that I didn't have a flare the other week from stress or something I ate, God forbid. So I was really stuck in between, the lesser of two evils. So my gynecologist did try and hook it up to where I would have a installation done during the procedure. That way they could numb my bladder, and kind of get ahead of the inflammation and irritation that it was going to cause. And that was not possible. So I went back in for a follow-up because I was in so much pain that, it just seemed like 10 didn't even describe the level of pain I was at. So she referred me to UCSD for urology because my urologist down here had botched a couple installations. I will get to that, different story, different day. But and then I saw this terrible, terrible, terrible urologist that came and tried to do an installation that was a Parson solution, but it was like a turkey baster full of all of the ingredients. Yet I can't even begin to tell you how wrong it was. I don't even think he was in my urethra. When I got up off the table, I literally pissed myself. Well, it felt like I pissed myself. The entire solution was just in my socks, in my shoes. It was a nightmare. So finally, when the COVID, chaos broke, I went back to UCSD and started my installations. While I couldn't get them done 3 a week like I did before when I was working in San Diego, traveling to El Centro, living in El Centro, traveling to San Diego, getting the installations, getting pelvic floor therapy, and then traveling back home. I was getting one done a week, and I started to see improvements almost immediately. After that, I realized that it wasn't just my IC that was the issue, it was my pelvic floor dysfunction. After such a huge surgery, they did it abdominally, everything was just sliced and diced. I mean, it was bad. So I was referred to comprehensive therapy services, which was possibly the best thing that has happened to me outside of all my other wonderful providers I've been sent to. I established care with Catherine, and the reason I really wanted to do this video is because I filmed a session of ours, and what I'm trying to do is normalize the things that we look up in secret, that are hushed. I want to normalize talking about painful sex and what I do to get around that and how I get through it and how far I've come since it felt like, tissue was ripping upon penetration. So she allowed me to push my body. Unlike my wonderful physical therapist that I used to see, who was, who worked along the over 3 is not okay with me guideline, Catherine listened to me. I told her, I said, look, I had a 1.5 years worth of pelvic floor physical therapy, and I was actually sent to I think she was a temp therapist, and she basically told me that if I could not get my pain levels below a 3 within 3 months, she would have to discharge me as a patient because I would have been plateaued in the system's eyes, or the eyes of the system. So that was a little disheartening because I was trying to force my body into being okay. But our first session, everything was a 9, okay? Just looking at it was a 9. So she started to loosen up, but I was telling her, you know what, just go for it. Apply the pressure and do it. After our first session, I was in pain. I was. It took me about 2 days to feel better, but then after that, I saw a dramatic difference. And so I went back and I told her, and again, she is a wonderful therapist who works within the over 3 is not okay with me, but for me, she made an exception because I told her my body is okay with more pain. If you touch it with just, you can just barely palpate, that's going to be a 9. If you push into what would be a 3, it's going to feel like a 9. So just do what you need to do, relax that muscle, because whatever she was doing, I was seeing instant results, and it was just amazing. But this is where the belly breathing comes in, and why it is so important is because when she would touch those trigger points, I would get out of my head and into my belly, and I would just breathe it out. I would take a huge breath, and on the exhale, I would drop my pelvic floor and allow that stretch of hers, that massage that she was doing, to be more effective. It would get deeper and, longer the way that she would do it. So I am able to have sex now without as much pain. I'm not going to say it's without pain because that would be a lie. But I use aids like gel, lube that has lidocaine in it. It's Siren lube. I also use lube that may not be available to other people, but it's THC lube. It also helps with the anxiety of things, because you're expecting this shit show, this painful shit show, and we're trying to keep you from doing that. So over time, I will be reviewing things like how to use a pelvic wand if you don't have access to a pelvic floor physical therapist, or using something like the Millie dilator. Bought one of these, and it's cool because it vibrates and it dilates at your own speed. This is a little bit pricey, but totally worth it. So again, over time, I do want to explain these things and what to use to avoid an embarrassing sexual encounter, because even with my husband, having IC took the sexy out of sex. I mean, we had to plan intimacy, which is not intimate at all. So as we get to know each other, I will be doing lives, I will be reviewing these things, but I just wanted to get ahead and do this post so it wasn't going to be one of those things where you're like, oh my God, this therapist is out of her mind doing what she's doing, or this girl is not helping us at all, or who the hell is this girl? So hi, I'm Alex, and I really hope that I'll be able to help some way, somehow. Stay tuned, and I hope to see you around.